This is The Comfy Chairs, a podcast from 123 Limited. And this is your host, Kate. When I was about 8 or 9, I went to my parents and told them, I've decided it's time for me to develop a sense of humor. Please take me to the library. My parents managed to stifle their laughter and took me to the library, where I checked out a whole stack of joke books. And now I have a sense of humor. Fortunately for most of us, humor is not a subject of serious study. Instead, it's something that connects them to others or makes the workday go smoother and faster. But anybody who has been told it's just a joke knows that humor can go too far or cause harm. So how do we make use of humor for good? What role does it play in healthy, engaging workplaces? And why doesn't HR want us to have any fun? And that's why I've invited an experienced HR leader and aspiring stand-up comic, someone who is dedicated to people, operations, and finding humor in her world for today's conversation. Kim, thank you for joining me in the Comfy Chairs today. As you know, I like to let my guests introduce themselves, so why don't we take a moment for that?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kim Minnick. I'm a fractional people ops leader, which basically means I do HR on a part-time basis for companies who need strategic HR help. On the side, I'm a gardener, I'm an aerialist, I'm a lazy human. Yeah.
I don't know that aerialist and lazy have ever been used in the sentence before.
As I've been building a business, some of the physical wellness has slipped to the lower end of the priority list.
It does that. You and I have met through some mutual HR colleagues, and I was so impressed with your energy. Your writing is on LinkedIn, of all places, is hysterical. I laugh almost every day when I have a chance to see your posts.
I worry some of them don't land. People show up with like this support reaction. And I'm like, oh no, I'm fine, everyone. I'm fine. Read it in a different tone.
Yeah. Well, that is a perfect way for us to kind of slide in to our topic today about humor, because it is so individual and there are so many nuances to it. And in human resources, I feel like I know from my past life, when I was in the people operations side of the HR sphere, it just felt like there wasn't a lot of fun at all.
Yeah.
So I do want to start with kind of that easy one. Why are they the fun police?
Yeah. You sent me these questions in advance and I went on a walk with my dog and was just playing this question over and over in my head, because recently in the last few years, there's been this movement of HR isn't your friend. And like, I agree, I'm not your friend. I'm a coworker. But like the cognitive dissonance of like HR is my friend and fun police like must exist in some people's head. And I don't think we're the fun police, but I have been the person at the happy hour who's been like, hey, do you think maybe it's time for you to go home? I have done some gentle nudges because someone should be responsible. I don't know if we're the fun police. I don't know if we're like, the spirit of responsibility at the party, but I do think like HR shows up, HR knows the rules, and maybe people are more likely to play by them when we're around, but it gets back to us if it's not around. So I don't know. Maybe we are the fun police.
Well, all of my people ops experience predates the pandemic. And I know that so much changed during that. I mean, people in their essence are the same, but the way HR does its job, the way people treat HR has hit this inflection point since 2020. But before that, I experienced when I was an HR leader that so many frontline managers, they cede their authority to human resources for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons.
HR said.
Mm-hmm. It is. HR said. I am reminded one time, it was, I think it was like around a spirit week or maybe around Halloween. It was, kind of relaxed dress code. People could come in, dress up, costumes of some sort. And I got a call from an accounting manager. And I'm saying accounting kind of on purpose because it, stereotypes can be funny to us. And I feel like this was this unfortunate stereotypical moment where the accounting manager called and said, "You have to come look at one of my employees. She's wearing stretch pants that aren't appropriate."
Tell me about these stretchy pants.
I was also like, I'm not going to come look at your employee. You know the policy. It says it's supervisor discretion. If you think that what this person is wearing is not appropriate for the office, even given the relaxed standard of the day, you can take care of it. I am not coming upstairs to stare at this poor middle-aged woman who decided to have some fun on a Friday.
I feel like I just had this picture of like calling down to the basement to HR to like summon them up to like, enforce a dress code. What is our role? Yeah. And like my pre-pandemic HR experience was in VC tech, San Francisco. So I remember I had this employee, Jessie. She was an amazing human. And she was always like, you can be friends with us. You can come out to happy hour. You can like have relationships with your colleagues. And like, it took me years to be able to even accept that idea because it is a weird balance. Like,
it very much is.
You are kind of always HR when you're hanging out with colleagues, even if it's not in the workplace. So I do think like it's an interesting balance to strike.
It is. And I
before you summon us up from the basement.
Oh, sweet mercy, Kim. It was just ridiculous. But there was a dearth of management knowledge and ability on this team. I kind of inherited them as my HR responsibility. And that was something I spent a lot of time on. So I think one of the reasons, it's not just the, oh, you are the rule holder and I'm afraid of being the rule breaker. I think some of it comes from the fact that managers aren't prepared to manage all the time. And so they...
Oh, certainly.
It's the HR said. Although sometimes HR is permissive about that too.
So I wrote something yesterday about this. Like,
that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah, look, it's okay if you want to blame me sometimes. If they have to, go fill out their self-identification paperwork or like, we have a lot of compliance that, especially in the US, our government is awesome about paperwork. And there's a lot of things we have to do. So if you want to just blame HR because we ask you to fill this out, great. Or we're adopting a new process. Like, sure, I'll take it on the chin. That one's fine. It's kind of like when no, I can't go out tonight. There's a new movie and my husband's really excited to see it. So I'm going to bail and hang out with like, ultimate excuse.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to be really like, to your point, we need to give managers the tools to manage, particularly in things we shouldn't be being blamed for. Performance management, difficult conversations, engagement, policy rollout. Like we need to invest in the managers. And I think the more we do that, the less we kind of become the paperwork enforcer,
Exactly. Exactly right. Yeah. So you and I are on the same page about the fact that while human resources doesn't function as the quote unquote fun police, there has to be a level of objective responsibility there. But what gets missed in this conversation, I think, is how much humor HR people get to encounter in the workplace that frankly the average worker may never see.
Yeah.
So it's always been ironic to me that HR is the meanie, but we're seeing the slimy underbelly of human nature at the same time, which is sometimes just silly.
It's look, you have to laugh at life,
Mm-hmm.
I think. I spent a lot of time, and I think maybe we all did, just like uh, feeling like I didn't deserve to laugh
Mm.
at some of the absurdities. Like that would make me a bad human, a bad professional, whatever. But like one time I had an employee going on a crusade against Coca-Cola.
Huh.
Like coming to it, we shouldn't have sodas and this and that. And it was just, what?
Oh, oh, I have the opposite side of that story where working in a healthcare organization for so long, at some point there was this bright idea that for the sake of employee health and to model our priorities, that we would stop serving sugary beverages everywhere. And the employee uproar about taking away their sugary beverages.
And like those are funny, silly things. And we deal with some really wild, sometimes horrific,
Yeah.
sometimes very slimy things at work. And I think like you can wallow in despair and you can like hate humanity, or you can try and solve the issue, do the best you can to prevent anything like that in the future, and crack some jokes, because how did we get here? We could
Mm-hmm.
be on a beach making art, but we chose Excel spreadsheets and capitalism. So let's try and have a laugh, because this work is really emotional.
Yeah.
And we really do, we have to hold that space for some of those difficult emotions. And we deserve the release too. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't think your employees are going home and talking bad about work and cracking jokes with their friends
Mm-hmm.
over, beverages or bread, like I hope they are too, like as
Yeah,
much as we can. Mm-mm.
exactly. I agree. Well, and this goes to my next prepared question. Why is humor important at work? Because I believe it is a necessary component of a healthy workplace.
I mean, it's a human emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like humor, laughter, joy. I think like for a healthy work environment, we need to be able to indulge
Yeah.
in great emotions and hold space for tough ones. I was thinking about, okay, so I'm hilarious, obviously.
Yes.
I am my
Very.
biggest cheerleader. But I was thinking, I've always used humor in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
and HR presentations can be boring. Open enrollment, a new performance management process, new paperwork, right? So you make these jokes to help it land well, to help connect with your audience, to help reinforce, like, look, I know part of this is not great too, but help me, help you, help me.
Yes.
Um, but early in my career, I used to make the jokes to cover up my expertise. And I had a manager, Kelly Dragovich. She pulled me aside one day and said,
Interesting.
"You're funny, but you're distracting from your message, and it makes you look less experienced than you are,"
Mm-hmm.
something to that effect. And I was like, oh, hmm. So now, like, I've shifted not to put the humor on or about me or my experience or my profession or career, but rather like the situation. Because to what we were just talking about, it's kind of a funny situation we're all in. So if we can pluck out these little bright spots in the situation and bring humor to connect and inspire, like I think that'll help just some programs land better.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's interesting, Kim. I had a very similar experience where I was facilitating a discussion about a competency model, and we had a vendor that had come in and was our external expert for it who couldn't be there for this particular session. And I made a self-deprecating remark about, well, I guess you're just stuck with me, to the
Yeah.
team. And one of the leaders in that team stopped the meeting. He was very appropriate, very kind. Like, Kate, don't talk about yourself that way. You are skilled, you are talented. We are not stuck with you. Don't tell that message to people. It's not fair for either of us.
And like, shout out to the leaders that do that,
Mhm.
right? In an appropriate and a kind way. I'm sure there was trust built there. So like it wasn't out of the blue.
Exactly.
But truly, like, yeah, you can be humorous and make jokes and highlight your expertise and your professionalism rather than detract from it. And it's a really I think it's a fun and wild balance to strike. I think it takes time. I think like a budding as aspirational, who knows, stand-up artist. I think like there's a lot of practice and there's a lot of refinement and there's a lot of jokes that don't land well.
Exactly. I think what we're hitting on, though, and you used some beautiful language earlier that I'll later regret that I can't recall. But essentially, it's when we find humor at work, at least, it is best when it's about the circumstance, not about the people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even though I am a big fan of self-deprecating humor, I think it's some of the best out there. When you make fun of a person, even if it's yourself, in a setting where you're working with each other, you are breaking trust in some ways. So what about the circumstances? Can we find that glint of humor? I also think
certainly I think you're like pushing an image on someone, even if it's yourself, when we do that. And I think rather like, again, humor to connect and inspire is a little bit better than to just like have a laugh.
That's a great point. I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready that humor isn't always about laughter. It can be about finding the bright moments. That it is kind of more an attitude than a joke, if you will.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, like I think there's a lot of humor in the basics of the human condition. How amazing we are, how horrible we are, all at once. And it's not necessarily something to laugh at, but it is humorous in its sense. And that is the space where I think if we can work in finding a little bit of light, something that eases how hard day-to-day life is, but work is work. If we can find somewhere in that space where we are hitting on how do we make this easier for people, because there is sometimes just comedy in our very nature and circumstance, that can be one of the best places for workplace humor.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to add on that one, but I like making fun of situations. I like finding bright spots, but to your point, it's not always just making fun. It's like we can have jokes and humor and I don't know, find those bright spots. And I thrive on that. Like I actually need that. I'm a plant. If I don't have that light, I will wither and die. So if I can help others find it too, because I've been in those positions where it's sometimes hard to find humor. Sometimes you need someone else to like pull you out of that mud pit and say like, look, no, let's clean you off. Let's take a minute to just at least laugh, and then we can problem solve.
So we've been talking a lot about sort of the trial and error, the balance. I mentioned that I did some competency model work in the past, and there was one model I worked with that had humor listed among the personal and interpersonal skills. There were times where I would kind of head scratch on that. Is humor really a skill? What do you think?
So similarly, I worked at a place where creativity was a competency and value. And I'm not sure if this would resonate with humor, but we would do, it was my favorite thing I think I've ever done at work, these 15-minute creative prompts where in a Slack channel, somebody would throw up prompt, I don't know, explain your favorite movie using only emojis, or make a picture out of things you can only find in nature, or write the lunch menu to your new restaurant. Just like silly 15-minute creative exercises. So when we talked about creativity as a value, we also were able to help folks explore that muscle that maybe isn't used often. So, especially in a workplace setting, because like not all humor is appropriate for the workplace, as I have learned. Um, but truly, like how if humor is something that you're judging as a skill, like how are you helping folks grow that muscle? How are you setting the boundaries? How are you inspiring it day to day? My husband went on and I think a lot of teams do this, especially sales teams, to an improv class.
Yes.
And like kind of fell in love with improv for a while. And it was fun to watch him go through that journey. And that's, bringing a humor competency into your profession, right? Like improv, sales, client facing, all of that. So is it a skill? Yes. Yes. I think it's something that you can grow and learn. But I think it's important, like, we can't dictate people's emotions. Like, I think about a lot of comics who struggle with depression. I think a lot about, humor does not equal happiness. And I think that might be important to think about if you're building a job competency framework. Because mental health is real.
Mental health is health. It's interesting that you bring up improv training. I've encountered those as well, both kind of as a student and as helping people find the right type of coaches. And what's interesting is we associate improv with humor because so many unexpected things come out of improv moments. But if you back up, what improv really is it's like a thinking framework more than anything else. It's a set of skills about how you think and respond. And it's interesting that so often it ends up being funny. In general, or weird or quirky, that it tells us a lot about humans, that's where we go very often. But improv also comes into play during, if you think about the skill set of listening, of being open and curious, that can be a performance corrective conversation as well.
Or, an accessibility conversation, or, so much.
Exactly.
Or an investigative conversation. I do think, to your point, like improvisation is listening, active listening, response. I think it's a skill that can be taught. I love how you framed that we do tend to lean on humor. I think especially in improv classes or in front of groups of people, because like, ooh, maybe I'm feeling embarrassed. And if we can laugh, I'll feel less embarrassed. I think, laughter brings levity sometimes. And again, it kind of takes me back to my early career. If I can make you laugh, it'll make this lighter.
Yep.
But you have to be conscientious of where that humor is being directed.
Yeah. But one of the reasons I like you bringing up improv and creativity is that both of those are, again, about how we think and how we look at the world. And thinking skills we know we can teach. So if humor is a skill, if we're going to measure it, again, that question is, how do we set the expectation for people around it, and as necessary, train it, if you will. So that's my next question, is how do we help people grow humor as a skill?
I have no idea.
I know this is, if we could crack the code on this, that's the business that we'll start and we'll be multimillionaires, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, truly. I think like I'm struggling with this because I struggle with depression myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've gone, I think
Same.
2020 to now, I think we all had some flavor of,
Mm-hmm.
gray or dark times, whether internally or externally. And so it was hard to find humor for a long time. Like I was not in a place where humor was happening. I
Mm-hmm.
was, surviving for a bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know how we train it. I don't know how we inspire it, but I do think like great leaders can model it,
Mm-hmm.
especially in moments of frustration, right? Like if you're a client-facing employee, you've probably had a difficult client.
Yes.
If you're customer service rep, I used to work at a theme park in customer service, and
Oh,
the complaints,
my
like,
goodness.
oh man. Um, but really, I think like, it took other people modeling humor for me to like
Mm-hmm.
regain that sense. So, and like humor is sometimes hard to be displayed. Like, what
Yes.
if you're just a quiet person? And what if you're just, hey, I do my job, I go home and I have a decent time and we'll call it a day. Like
Yeah.
there are so many varying levels of it. And I think maybe I don't know if it's a competency I would put inside of a framework, but I do think it would be like um, a behavior I would want leadership to model
Yeah.
when appropriate.
And I don't want to get too technical on
No,
competency
let's do it.
frameworks for the rest of the world, but I think it would fall into a potential derailer more than anything else.
Mm,
That lack of humor or inappropriate workplace humor could derail someone, but it's not necessarily an essential to the job.
I 100% agree because it can like again self-deprecating, inappropriate, like
Yeah.
those aren't gonna help you in a lot of places.
Hmm.
So yeah,
And
great call out.
well, I also think it's a great place to talk about inclusion as well because humor is so individual at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And there are cultural reference points and shared background that really shape what we find humorous. And I'm
Hmm.
intentionally not saying funny here because humor doesn't always mean laughter.
Yeah,
There are plenty of people in the world that have great senses of humor, but we wouldn't necessarily classify them as funny. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're laughing all the time either.
sure. And
And
there's dark humor
oh,
and
one of my favorite forms, yes. But it's being able to understand that it is this amazing, beautiful spectrum that falls into what is considered humorous. That is an entry point for being more inclusive and understanding
mm-hmm.
too. And being able to practice empathy. Like, oh, I thought this was funny and you didn't. Let me be empathetic and imagine what that might be like for you. And it
Yeah,
becomes an invitation then to understand how I think and process and what my background is because I did find that funny. And if we can, instead of going immediately to offense when a joke doesn't fall or we hear something we don't find funny, think about, well, what is it like for that person that this is outside of their zone of humor, if you will. I do think there are skills that can be fostered that will eventually result in people's humor
mm,
becoming like richer, if you will. And
hmm,
I see those as things like creativity,
hmm,
empathy, and curiosity that and critical thinking, frankly. Because again, humor, I think the textbook definition of it, humor is that when they're unexpected, when it creates a dissonance for us. And that's often what we find
mm,
amusing. So critical thinking is a way to get to a point of finding where are those places that are unexpected and then being able to analyze, not overthink, but analyze, is there humor in this? And these are all
yeah.
obviously instantaneous things. But if we see that there's lack of humor in someone and we're doing training around how do we help grow this person, instead of saying, well, you have to work on your skill of humor, it's let's work on coaching you to have greater curiosity, deepening your empathy, using your critical thinking skills, and becoming somebody that looks at the world in multiple ways.
And I would add like failure and problem solving to that. I am more confident in myself because of the failures I have survived. Right? So, and there has been some times where I'm like, there's nothing that's ever going to be worse than this. And I came out the other side of it, right? And I learned something and I'm better prepared to handle that situation. So, sometimes I think problem solving and reflection and, there's a lot of, to your point, like looking intrinsically, looking backwards, having some of those deep self conversations, not just about what's funny and what's not funny, but about, failures and accomplishments and all of that. And I think you can find light in that situation. And maybe that's how you start finding humor, is reflections and debriefs and, maybe poking a little thread or something. Who knows?
We started talking about leaders modeling senses of humor or good humor. What are ways for them to kind of practically, demonstrably encourage humor, fun, laughter? And maybe what are some approaches to avoid?
Ooh, I'm going to start with avoid first because my brain. I often, with my direct reports and my team and like close communities, fractional people is one of them that I work in. I often say like, hey, I'm a little toxically positive. Like I do actually over lean on this. And I have a trusted circle of people. When I have a team beneath me, they're included in this of like, hey, help me find this right balance, because I know sometimes I don't really want to shine a light in the dark corner. I do kind of want to pass over it. So I think one, like recognizing, is humor a fault or a crutch or something that can actually be harmful to finding like root cause problems. So I try and like really open that line of communication with my team and say, hey, this is actually something I struggle with. And sometimes I'm a little bit better with non-humorous conversations in a more intimate setting. So help me regulate that, which is super helpful. So avoid like, using it as a crutch. Modeling the behavior, again, like find the situation, like especially when I think like the big drags, you've lost a client, there's a bug in the code, or, a roadmap didn't kind of get to where it wanted, a goal didn't get achieved. Like there's probably an issue. There's definitely learnings in there. Find them, explore them, and then like find some of the silly little things, because there's some silly stuff that probably didn't need to happen that happened. So poke fun at that. I think it creates a memory of like, oh, let's not do that again. Or let's be aware of this in the future. And I think it brings some of that camaraderie to the team. Like, hey, this is something we can all, bond over in a happy moment or bond over in a lighthearted way, while we also recognize like, there's a lot of stuff we got to clean up.
I like that. Well, and that goes to the humor isn't always about laughter. It can be about finding here's the diamond in all of the mess. It's storytelling. There is an element of storytelling in there, and that can be a way, and it's not that you have to always be positive. That's not the lesson here, but am I good at telling the story of how we work, of how sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong? That can be a way. making stories part of the fabric of the team can be a great way to encourage humor at work.
Yeah, it's a skill that I'm just now learning, thinking about, getting interested in. I think there is, it, shout out to data scientists. I find them really inspiring when you think about data scientists,
I love
hilarious.
it.
But I find them really inspiring when you think about using data to tell a story. And then I think when you can take that framework and that approach and then polish up the diamonds that you find in it, like it's so impactful. I think it just resonates with people, right? Like I am not a cultural anthropologist, but storytelling feels like it's been part of humanity for so long. It's interesting to think about it or just to be more thoughtful about it in the workplace.
I find it funny that what we're talking about right now is how to use data to create joy at work.
I mean,
there's something intrinsically.
That's the root of all happiness, right?
Right?
Is data. Jeremy Berry, the number 42. That's the root of all happiness. It's data.
I love it. Thank you for mentioning two of my favorite stories in there.
So great.
Yes. Yeah. There's something, The Good Place, there's so many layers there. One of which is humor, but it's also, for a lot of people, it's this touchstone of understanding certain human foibles and fears. This is a little bit like you were talking about with after action summaries and reviews of if something doesn't go well, can we find something in the midst of all of that we all share? Do we look for and utilize touchstones with each other on our team? Because they become signals for us. Like the fact that you know The Good Place tells me there are things I'm going to like about you.
Yeah, there's some similar flavor to what we enjoy.
Yeah.
Which is nice to find.
Tossing in a little bit of Douglas Adams, where you have, which is interesting. I feel like we're talking about a lot of satirical things, but in the workplace, satire is not necessarily always the best. There are places for it, of course. One of the questions I sent to you is about how a lot of times in those difficult roles like human resources, I've seen it happen for people working like in emergency medicine as well, that humor becomes a coping mechanism rather than being a point of connection or a healthy outlet. It becomes a way to deflect the difficult feelings or gloss over the hard conversations. Humor that's not serving its purpose.
Yeah.
Because I think humor has a lot of power to heal us, to make us better, to make us smarter, all the great things. I'm thinking of if there's an uncomfortable conversation that has to be had, I have to do peer-to-peer feedback or I have to admit my own mistake. And instead of rolling up my sleeves emotionally and getting into it, I crack a joke. If I'm always kind of deflecting the hard thing with a joke, even if it's light and funny and people do laugh, but I'm not
takes away.
Yeah, it may
detracts.
It may be on the toxic positivity side, or it could be I'm just not comfortable having hard conversations. So instead, I'm going to say something funny and run away.
Yeah.
That I think there is not a thought or a mental health issue, but I do think that leaders and peers have the opportunity to look at the behavior and say, hey, Kate, every time this difficult subject comes up on our team, I've noticed that you make jokes. And it kind of derails us from being able to address it. Or you're not part of the solution, when we do discuss how we're getting over this, because you're making
You're
jokes about it.
detracting from the issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of, is there anything that I can do to make it easier for you to be able to have this difficult conversation? The work is to say, I'm seeing this thing that you do repeatedly that's not getting the results we need for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, if you are working with someone or if you're in a field that has to deal with a lot of difficult things and you find yourself or members of your team kind of always falling back on joke making rather than facing, confronting whatever the hard thing is, that's an opportunity. The joke becomes a sign for you to say, I may need to give some feedback. I may need to stop laughing about this funny thing because we're not getting the results.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, again, like, humor can help guide behaviors, but like it can't be used to cover up serious, significant issues. When you were talking through that, it again reminded me of my boss who pulled me aside, had gained a lot of trust, and told me, like, your humor's not helping. Your joke isn't serving you. And she was able to do it because of the trust that we had built, because she understood, because she had observed my approach so many times. And we had times I leaned on humor when I was nervous. I leaned on bad jokes when I was nervous. And she spent time investing to getting to know me one-on-one. So she knew, she genuinely knew I was distracting from what was being at hand. And I think, like, to various extremes, that's the same approach. Like, if you're realizing that you or someone on your team is, sweeping stuff under the rug with a joke, that's not helpful. And it needs to be addressed just like any other feedback conversation. What I think the opportunity is to better channel that energy, because sometimes it is nervous energy. I had a boss on another end of the spectrum. I use weird voices. It's a crutch. It's a nervous crutch. It's something that those lemurs were like, here, this will be helpful. And I had a manager who called it out once, and this person had not invested in so many other things for that feedback to land well. And valid feedback, yes, very. Did it change how I approached my profession, my presence, whatever? Sure, yeah. It also damaged the relationship that we had, because it felt less, let me help you grow your career, and more fit into what you should be.
Yeah. I don't like this about you.
But again, the
Stop
feedback was, the feedback was valid and true and real, but delivered poorly. So great on that manager for recognizing the deficit. Great on that manager for giving the feedback. The miss was that building the trust and learning my strengths before calling out my weaknesses. And I think that might be what folks who approach these difficult conversations, like, hey, I know you're using this as a crutch, and I know it feels good in the moment, but we're at work and we got a job to do. And it's distracting from the issue. So let's better channel that energy to highlight your expertise, to draw attention to a problem solve instead of an issue. Like, just rechannel it. Or don't.
Yeah. You had me thinking about our conversation, the part of our conversation earlier where we were discussing ways to encourage humor, to foster it. And this is what it comes down to. It's the relationships. Because one of the ways to encourage humor is to ask your people, what do you find funny? What do you find not funny? Where are your boundaries and your borders? And what is it that you need from me to feel safe to make jokes?
Yeah, humor can be a trust building exercise, but it doesn't work if it's only humor. I think especially in the people ops world, we have to deliver hard messages.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we terminate people, we take away
Yeah.
their income and their livelihood. We do really hard investigations about, inappropriate conduct,
Yeah.
hostile work environments. Um, so we can't always be funny. We are not comedians. That is not our job. But I do think when you can, again, bring light to something that is annoying while you're still able to hold time and space for those difficult conversations, I think that helps bridge a gap of trust. It's not, oh, they're cold and business hearted and are working for the company, or, oh, they don't know what they're doing because they just crack jokes all the time. Like there is a really thin balance to find there.
Yeah. And that takes, the only way you can do that is through trial and error. And,
Oh, yeah, I've made so many bad jokes.
oh, yeah, you and me both. You and me both. I think there's
Oh,
also a space for asking for feedback from others too, whether you're a human resources
mhm.
professional, a leader, somebody striving for leadership, is saying, I value humor. Does that show up? Does that show up in how I treat other people? Am I still respectful?
Mhm.
Whatever the right flavor of request is, but asking for feedback as you go. So you are trying things, you are having courage to experiment, if you will, but you're not just relying on your own. I think this went well. I think it didn't. Can be
Yeah,
really
my
important.
best audience is the mirror for sure.
She thinks you're amazing,
um,
doesn't she?
I know. Well, most of the time. She definitely thinks every joke lands. And shout out to, again, I have teams, I have confidants,
Mm-hmm.
I have people who I can go to and hey, can I run a presentation by you? And here's a couple of things that I've put in, or, budding, aspiring stand-up artist. I have a joke that kind of pokes fun at a conversation a friend and I had. So the first thing I did was like, hey, if I tell this in public, how does this make you feel? So I think it's really important to, if you're going to explore building this muscle, you got to get a lot of personal trainers on board,
Yes.
because it is so delicate. There's a great Instagram account. I think it's Matthew and Paul. They a couple. One of them is
Oh,
going blind, has a degenerative eye
yes.
disorder, and they prank each other a lot. It's a beautiful relationship. They also talk about some of their hard times and struggling, but they did a post talking about the like philosophy of their pranks, and it's a similar when you get to hear comedians talk about the philosophy of building jokes. Like it has to be harmless. Everyone has to laugh. Like invite everyone into the joke. That's what
Mm-hmm.
makes it funny. So I think when we think about humor and cracking jokes at work, all of that has to come into play. Like we have to invite everyone in. Like it does have to land well. It kind of has to be lighthearted. And I take a lot of inspiration from creators that do that well because it's balanced to strike.
It is. I Yeah, I'm thinking about some of the pranks that they've pulled on each other. It's magnificent because it's so much love. You can tell there's so much love and trust there. They are intentional about finding something funny in this kind of hard lot that life has dealt them.
Yeah, and I think they find, humor as a way to celebrate accomplishments
Mm-hmm.
or as a way to like again bring light to some struggles. I don't know. It's a great account.
It really is.
And I think if you're interested in a philosophical approach to humor, you'd probably appreciate what they're doing over there.
Mm-hmm. One of my soapboxes in life is about how we need more love in leadership. And I love that you
Mm.
brought those gentlemen up because so much of their humor is born out of their love for each other. And it's obviously there's, romantic love there, but it's also they
Mhm.
want good for one another. And that's what I think leadership love is wanting the best for the people that you lead, for the work, for the people whom you serve. And there's a lot to be said for in the workplace. Is your humor coming out of a place of I want entertainment, or is it coming out of a place of I want good for these people?
Yeah.
And one of the good things in life is being able to share a laugh.
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with the idea of love in the workplace. I just,
I
words have
know.
meaning and
I
laugh.
know they do. And that's why I'm
But,
very clear.
you know,
It's not romantic. It's not,
but I
it's
do
definitely not erotic.
think,
It is a
oh,
yeah, no. It's not
but
even
yeah,
platonic.
there is definitely like a genuine, you have to, as a manager, you're kind of investing in the next generation of your profession.
Hmm.
So, like, you should care for the individuals that are doing that in a way that, shares knowledge, shares wisdom, finds humor, and imparts experience. So, yeah, I definitely think that that is super important if
Hmm.
you choose to be a people manager. And I will say choose. You don't have to
Yes,
be. There are other options.
that's exactly right. There's so many other options. And if you're not willing to invest care, if you're not willing to let your mistakes be public, if you're not willing
Yeah.
to learn at every opportunity, if you're not willing to spend time with the people, do not choose it.
Hmm.
Do not choose
Do
it.
not choose that.
We've talked a lot about, I think where my head is going next is thinking about everything that the world has sort of gone through in the last few years.
Mm. Still going through, I feel
Still,
like.
oh yeah, yeah. I what I've said for many years now, unfortunately, is that I think the pandemic just exacerbated and accelerated a lot of the problems that we had brewing.
Sure. Yeah. Fractures, definitely.
Yeah. There hasn't, you talked about this. You said, it didn't feel like there was a lot of reason to laugh. It wasn't a lot of fun for years, literally, for many people. I think it is still possible, though, for us to keep our senses of humor during really hard times.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, what do you think some of the ways that we can go about that are?
Ooh, yeah. I think, like, speaking personally, wearing sorrow felt like a badge of honor for me. Like,
Mm, mm-hmm,
there is, and again, brain chemistry designed by lemurs. Um, there was a lot of like, how could I deserve or be allowed to laugh when there's so much pain. Um, and I'm kind of a nihilist. Like, we're all bacteria floating on a rock through space. Like, what?
mm-hmm,
There have been wars and famine and crises, and look, it's accelerating, and I don't like how much we have social media now, and all of that exists, more than I would any of us would enjoy.
mm-hmm,
And like, that doesn't mean there aren't joys in life. Like, have you ever spent the time to watch an apricot grow on a tree? Like, that's wild. In the winter, that tree didn't have any leaves. And by June or July, you're telling me I can eat a delicious piece of fruit off of it? Like, okay, I can find joy in that. And I think I think it takes a lot of gratitude, and a lot of compassion to be able to hold space for both of those. There's a lot of awful. There's a lot of awful. We can cry every day about it. Sometimes maybe we do. Um, and again, we can find those diamonds. We can find those sparkling points. We can help lift. It's not fun to be covered in mud. So if we can lift somebody else out of a mud pit of despair for a moment, like, that to me is just like I don't know. Is there anything better than, I don't know. That's my
Yeah,
wild tangent. I know it's hard to laugh, but if you can find that moment, none of us are getting out of here alive.
exactly.
So you spend your whole life in sorrow, or take the second to realize we're not getting out of here alive. So here for
Yeah.
a good time, not for a long time.
Because something you said made me think of a line from Mary Oliver. It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world.
Yeah. Yeah, very much that.
Yeah.
Like, above ground and standing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what?
Well,
How how lucky. How lucky. Um, and I think when you can, again, just hold both of those and make space for both of those and recognize, like, again, that's why we don't make fun of people. That's why we don't, you know, cover up deficiencies with humor, but rather find light in situations so we can
mm-hmm.
all rally around something better.
Yeah. Very early in the life of this podcast, I had the chance to kind of book club a really fabulous piece of writing with a former colleague of mine, Bittersweet by Susan Cain,
Okay.
where she explores how life is both bitter and sweet, that there is this
Mm,
beauty in the world that is often coupled with sorrow and sadness.
mm,
I think, because we've gotten into kind of this like, it's been so hard and there's sorrow. It is a serious thing just to be alive, but it's also zany. I think because again, bacteria on a rock floating through space. That's crazy pants. I think
that's crazy.
eh, I think humor in its best moments can be the place where the sweet and the bitter bridge, where they connect.
Mm,
And that's why it's important for us to think about humor at work, because we we want work to allow for people to be people. We
yes.
spend way too much time on the job to not let our humanity be present. So how do we find that place where the weirdness of life and the difficulty, where they can meet comfortably, where they can join without rough edges? And I think that's what humor gives us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll share a similar book recommendation.
Yes, please.
The Book of Joy. It's a week long. It was captured. It's a week long conversation between Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And this book is written by a UC Berkeley psychologist, she says, questioning her memory. But very similarly, like it
Mm-hmm.
talks about what I just said earlier, how to find joy in, compassion, in like gratitude, in like a genuine care for not just those but mankind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think maybe what we're hitting on is humor is actually a place where you swirl all of those really great and really hard things and bridge some of those wild gaps. Like humor might just be a connection point to getting off this rock.
I think what it is for us, I don't want to use too highfalutin language, but I feel like
Ooh, triple word score day.
it's not. It's not that fancy. I just don't know that it's the right word. It's kind of an equalizer,
Mm,
but it does. It connects. It clears the decks. We could probably very messily on my part get into all of the physiological benefits of laughter, the endorphins, the all the good things. And I think we have to recognize that we can't live humorous lives. Not that I know many people that would want to, but it's important for us to be intentional about it. And then when I think about, not overly intentional, because that would just suck all of the joy out of it, but when I think about people that are trying to make workplaces good for the people that work, are you thinking about things like, will there be laughter?
mm,
And if that's not part of your equation, go back to the drawing board.
I did. Very early in my career, I was working at a private equity conglomerate, and one of the, I don't know, chiefs of staff or director of special projects or whatever, very clearly it was like, work is not fun. This place is not fun. You are not here to have fun. We're here to do work and make money. And I was like, my next job was at a startup in San Francisco, and there was, dogs and a catering and a bar and, a papa shot. And I was just like, this is so different. So, look, humor is a practice. Building culture in the workplace is a practice. There is no one recipe that fits everyone. But my perspective, like, again, if we got to be there 40 hours a week, like, we should have some fun. Like, we should be able to, like, experience a variety of emotions, failure, success. Those are things that we see often. But, like, I think humor is an undercurrent to all of it. And I think that enables creativity, which can make work fun. What a wild idea.
Well, and vice versa. Fun supports creativity. Creativity drives innovation. It's all connected.
It's all connected.
But to your point, there is no one formula. For some people, the work is not fun. We're not here to have fun. We're here to make money. If you're getting the results you want and not causing harm to the people working for you, okay, I don't want to work there.
Yeah. And time and place, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want aircraft traffic controllers doing stand-up routines while they're trying to navigate airline traffic. That seems terrible.
Exactly.
But I do hope they have an opportunity to decompress with their colleagues. I think they're probably funnier than they let on. But I do think, again, all of that is a balance: time, place, appropriateness, how you're inspiring other human things like creativity, innovation, problem solving. Humor is just a little keystone in our lives.
So, as we start to wrap up, Kim, what are some of your takeaways, your big ideas, your final thoughts?
Yeah, Jerry Springer style.
Yes. Cincinnati boy.
He lived in Sarasota, Florida, and my father fixed his garage door once.
Small world.
I know. It's like a two truths and a lie sort of thing. So, all right, final thoughts. Well, I do think you can have fun and be humorous at work. I think if it's something you're interested in, it is a skill you can grow. Get a trusted board of personal advisors around you to help you hone that craft, because, like, it is a skill, it is a craft, it is something that needs to be trained and grown. And do it from a place that can hopefully inspire. I hope your humor is something that folks see as a bright light, even amongst dark times. I hope humor is used as a way to support and grow and connect and, again, inspire. But it doesn't happen without some bad jokes. So lean in, give it a shot, be kind to yourself. I'm sure I remember more of my bad jokes than the people who heard them. I think those are all of my final thoughts. I wish I was as smooth as Mr. Springer.
Let's not try for that. I think the thing I would want to add, I made a joke about myself in my introduction about, take me to the library. It's time for me to have a sense of humor. And all jokes aside, humor is a serious thing in that it is seriously important to us, and it is so essential to the human experience that we want to hold it lightly so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
because it does everything that you talked about. It inspires, it brings light, all the things that we need, especially in today's really often very sucky circumstances.
Yeah, the world's a heavy place.
Mm-hmm.
The world's a heavy place for sure. If we can lighten the load a little bit, maybe we should.
Exactly. And that's why it matters.
Kate, this was so fun.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much. Thank you for putting up with kitten antics and failing microphones and
wild conversation as always, just like it should be.
Exactly. Well, ma'am, thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
Of course.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating or review, or share it with others. You'll find Comfy Chairs updates and other thoughts on leadership and learning on Instagram at 123 Limited. That's ONE23 LTD.